Hello guys, welcome to Knowledge Pond YouTube channel. In this video, I would like to give complete information about ASP.NET 5 and MVC 6. In the year of 2015 and 2016, Microsoft has released a bunch of brand new technologies with respect to .NET world. And I'll share how MVC 6 and ASP.NET 5 is designed and how it is fit in the world of open source and cross-platform perspective. And so before getting to the ASP.NET 5, let's have some knowledge on how .NET changed recent years like 2015 and 2016. And what is special about recent releases in this recent 2015 and 2016, and why everyone talks about these releases very specially. And every year, Microsoft releases many new changes in all areas. And what is special about this release, and why we need to learn, and what is the benefits? What are the benefits we all get it once we learn all these new things? The session agenda would be the overview of Microsoft.NET 2015, Microsoft Web Stack Evolution, and ASP.NET 5 and an MVC 6, and .NET Execution Environment, and ASP.NET Project Structure. OWIN Katana architecture is the middleware architecture, and what are the different development tools are available to design develop the web apps, or and how we can publish and deploy the applications, and what about the unit testing, and what is special about xunit.net, and finally we'll end up with the roadmap and releases. I have divided this MVC 6 video series into 4 videos. The video 1 specially for Microsoft.NET 2015 and .NET Framework 4.6 and .NET Core and Web Stack Evolution. Part 2, video 2 contains about ASP.NET 5, ASP.NET 5 architecture, MVC 6 and project demo and project structure. And part 3 contains middleware about OWIN and Katana, how it been implemented in MVC and ASP.NET 5. And part 4, unit testing, publishing and deployment. Finally end up with roadmap. In this video, I'll give you what exactly the Microsoft Bold move and overview of .NET 2015, and what about tiny frameworks, the small frameworks, and .NET Framework 4.6, and what are the difference between the 4.6 and core .NET Core, and what exactly the open source and a cross-platform, how this MVC 6 fit in the world of open source and cross-platform, and what exactly the .NET execution model and web stack. So Microsoft Bold move. What exactly the bold move? Like in earlier days, if you see the Microsoft very strict all their product for Windows platform, and in the recent releases they did so much of innovation they took. They made some part of .NET as a open source, and some part of .NET is supporting for cross-platform support. So the Microsoft bold move on open source and cross-platform in the .NET development, and there are some key major changes in .NET areas are like innovation level. It brings this .NET platform forward and made so many innovation in many areas. They did so much of changes in languages, compilers, the library level, and application models and runtimes. They've been introduced so many tools as well. And the big and major changes is open source. The open source framework makes ASP.NET 5 to the next level for building and modern cloud-based web applications. Cross-platform, it supports and takes ASP.NET to another level to expanding .NET support to Linux and Mac OS apart from our regular Windows platform. This gives like so much of flexibility, and it gives opportunity to work on different environment. So what exactly the Microsoft .NET 2015? Microsoft .NET 2015 is an umbrella name for all .NET recent releases, but it is not a new version of .NET. It has a bunch of all recent releases all together we call as a .NET 2015. So we can say the .NET Framework 4.6 and Core 5, ASP.NET 5, Entity Framework 7, and SignalR, and universal apps and dynamic compilers and the development studio, command line tools, and all these small frameworks all together, with respect to .NET world we call as a Microsoft .NET 2015. That means these all new are being released in very recently in year of 2015, and they're calling one unified name for all these recent new releases in the world of .NET as a .NET 2015. If you see the history of .NET verticals, how they changed with respect to app model and framework and runtime. In earlier days, like earlier we used to develop .NET using .NET different kind of applications like WinForms and web forms. In WinForms, the app model is very big compared to the recent release of ASP.NET 5. In Windows desktop app, the app model is very big and framework also is very big and runtime also is a very big library. And if you see the similar things in ASP.NET 5, the web model is very tiny, very small. The framework also is very small and runtime as well very small. And if you see the comparison between ASP.NET 4 and 5, the app model compared to these two app models, like the size of app model is they reduce a lot and they decoupled from many unnecessary things which are not needed for developing web apps. In ASP.NET 4, the web framework itself is very big, size is very big, and very similar for Windows Store and phone apps as well. They reduce, this is the one way they made as a tiny frameworks for specific app types. Suppose if you want to develop apps for Windows Store, there is separate runtime, and phone there is a separate runtime, and ASP.NET 5 there is a separate runtime. That means they segregated all runtimes which are very specific to particular app development. So if you say the .NET 2015 architecture, so as usual there are three different layers. The bottom layer contains some shared libraries, runtimes and nugget packages. The middle layer contains .NET frameworks, the big framework .NET framework 4.6, and the tiny frameworks, small frameworks like .NET Core CLR and .NET native runtime. .NET Framework 4.6 is targeted for any kind of apps. It's a full-fledged integrated .NET runtime, and it has all the like libraries for especially for Windows platform. So using .NET Framework, we can design and develop WPF apps, Windows apps, ASP.NET 4 and 5 apps. .NET Core CLR that we internally call as a .NET Core 5. It is specially designed for, it is a tiny framework especially designed for ASP.NET 5 and MVC 6 apps, and as well as the universal Windows apps. So what exactly the .NET 4.6? That is the big and full-fledged .NET framework. So .NET Framework 4.6 is a full version, and it is complete for everything, for developing any kind of app like Windows, Windows Phone, Windows Server app, web app, and even for cloud-based apps as well. It comes along with Windows OS 10 and as well as Visual Studio favorite tool like 2015. It has some new dynamic compilers reused, and it has some 64-bit compilation supporting, and it provides they design they provide so much of framework level improvement so that there are a lot of changes with respect to performance, and it supports like high DPI support when we develop for any WPF and Windows kind of apps. It has a built-in support for SSL for while developing Windows Communication Foundation apps like web services. So other framework is the .NET Core 5. This we call as a tiny framework. This is specially designed for web application and MVC 5, MVC 6 and ASP.NET 5, any universal Windows apps, any app model. It has special library and it has special like runtime as well. So .NET Core is, we can say that is a very small and very optimized version of framework. Is mainly designed for ASP.NET 5 and MVC 6 apps. So moreover, it is a open source and it is available on GitHub. It is a modular runtime and library implementation that has subset that taken from the .NET Framework 4.6 only. So here the libraries we call as a core FX and runtime we call as a core CLR. The major benefit is it is a portability, very tiny framework. So we can package, deploy and this core CLR with our application so that we can eliminate our application depends on latest version of .NET. So if you need anything on the fly, we can get it from the open source like where it is available like from GitHub. So it also supports side-by-side execution. That means same hosting environment we can host different core CLR, so different web apps without any like dependency on between these two. So that we can maintain right like isolation between the apps. So there is some areas like they made for open source in .NET 2015 architecture. So the rounded area like yellow color grounded is the runtime components and compilers, libraries and .NET as usual .NET Core 5 and ASP.NET 5 and ASP.NET 4 and you know these are the areas they made available as a open source. So .NET native framework is specially designed for Windows Store apps, and here the code directly compiles into native code instead of compiling into MSIL by using .NET native framework. Here the .NET native is a special runtime, is very specially for universal apps. By using these apps, if you develop any apps, so they make so much of like performance, they increase a lot of performances, and it internally talks with low power like device like phones. It helps us to produce apps like characterized by faster startup and less execution time. That means it directly the apps which are targeted and by targeted using by .NET native framework, the apps are very fast compared to regular Windows apps. So how .NET internally execution happens? The moment we write the code, the code is compiled by using the dynamic Rustling compiler. It converts into our like high-level language code into intermediate language code. From there, it goes to the targeted systems. Like if you target our code for Windows Store, then it goes to .NET Native toolchain. From there, it generates whether it is exe or DLL. And if you are targeting our apps for ASP.NET like web application, then Rosalind Light converts and finally it generates the DLL. The whole like the process of execution model is very similar to old but earlier model. Thing is they use right now the dynamic compilation instead of static compilation. So in that web board, like in website, how Microsoft changed with respect to web board. And if you see the history of web stack, in 1996, the Microsoft started for targeted for web application by using ASP active server pages. In the year of 2010, like 2002 they released ASP.NET, which is the apps are developed using ASP is targeted on .NET framework. In the year of 2008, the Microsoft has released ASP.NET MVC, and 2010 like ASP.NET Web Pages, 2012 ASP.NET Web API support for web services, and 2012 again they released ASP.NET Signal or for any online communication chat kind of applications. In the year of 2015 ASP.NET 5 and an MVC 6, that this is the major releases with respect to web stack from the Microsoft. In the year of 2016, this year Microsoft again they renamed ASP.NET 5 and MVC 6 as ASP.NET Core 1.0. So I'll give the complete information what is the reason behind these naming conventions, and I'll go through each section, and I'll give complete information about MVC 6 and ASP.NET 5. If you see the evolution of web stack from very starting to till, and the earlier days like operating system they are using Windows. Right now they are using Windows, they are supporting for Windows and OS X and Linux. And runtime, earlier days we are using like we used to like IIS, our favorite web server. Now it is the runtime is DNX .NET execution environment. And again the runtime earlier the .NET it supports only .NET CLR. Now it supports .NET CLR and .NET Core CLR as well. And libraries, if you see in earlier .NET BCL and FCL, now it supports same .NET BCL and FCL. Apart from that, these libraries and runtimes they made put on the open source, so it is available in the NuGet as well. And application host earlier, the biggest problem was system.web, the complete web server. Right now, the application host is the DNX, so that we can host our favorite environment wherever we want. Again, the web servers were IIS earlier. Right now, IIS and HTTPCs and Kestrel as well. Application frameworks, FCL, GAC, and NuGet. Now everything is NuGet. And libraries is NuGet. Earlier is like GAC and NuGet only. The application we build using MS Build and CSC language compiler, and then it compiles to using the .NET particular language compiler. Right now everything compiles using the dynamic compilation, that is the DNX .NET runtime on Roslyn. And there are again apart from this there are a couple of areas they made open source again. If you see this diagram, and the DNX.CLR core CLR and .BCL and FCL .NET on NuGet, DNX IIS HTTPC Kestrel NuGet, and these are this area like application, some of their recent releases with respect to application libraries and frameworks, web server, application host, platform libraries, runtime, and runtime loaders. They made as a open source, and it is available as from GitHub. So what are the challenges in current web, and what is the reason behind these recent releases with respect to web world from the Microsoft? There should be a couple of there should be some challenges for definitely, and these challenges how like Microsoft to overcome on the recent releases. Let us go through current challenges. We all know that web world started with from the Microsoft around 15 years ago. And if you say there is a lack in asynchronous programming current ASP.NET 4 application, and the lack in the scalability, and it is facing a lot of issues when we compete with modern hardware compatibility, like if you are targeting our app for multi-core operating system, multi-core hardware support, there are a couple of challenges in that area. And again, there is a biggest challenge is data format. When we like making a compatibility, like when we getting the data from servers, the data format still support XML or some other format. Some cases they're supporting with JSON. Still, there are a couple of challenges, and a lack in dynamic compilation, and still there is a lot of dependency on the server side, and server generated HTML instead of using the rich client functionality that relies on services to gather the information. So that means if you see the current ASP.NET app, current ASP.NET application, we still using the server side controls. So we are processing everything from the server side, and rendering, we are sending that information to the client instead of we are unable to, like, we are not able to use proper, like, rich rich of client side frameworks, like that we are unable to, like, we are not able to complete integrate of client side frameworks. There are still lack in some area like cloud based hosting, and like we are still facing a lot of issues while hosting Azure and Amazon E2 and Google Host. In some cases, facing some challenges using current protocols as well. How all these things, all these things are resolved in the ASP.NET 5 and MVC 6. The ASP.NET 5, it is a open source and cross-platform framework for building and a modern cloud-based web application by using .NET framework, either full-fledged .NET framework or core.NET 5. In the ASP.NET 5, the Microsoft made a number of breaking architectural changes. That means they redesigned everything from the scratch. And so that is the one reason the web framework is much linear and more modular and faster. And it has a significant one way we can say, I told you that completely all features are rewritten and implemented, and they made it available as a NuGet modules, which allow us to optimize our application to have just what we need. It is a significant redesign of older version of ASP.NET. And moreover, it comes with a new cross-platform like CLR called .NET Core. That is a tiny and a small framework. If you see, the size is 11 MB compared to the full-fledged .NET framework that comes around 200 plus MB size. Now, from the size itself, we can easily understand how they made, how much, like how they made as a tiny framework, and which is targeted to run both Windows and different platforms like Linux and Mac OS. And it provides more modular and extensibility and supports for asynchronous and much linear framework for build every kind of web application and on Microsoft Web Stack level. So it has a built-in support for cloud ready by introducing environment-based configuration files. I'll go through these configuration files on while I'm giving this ASP.NET 5 on MVC 6 demo. And there is a built-in support for dependency injection and IOC as well. It is now includes a great support for SPA kind of applications. So earlier we are depends on third-party libraries. Right now they are providing complete support for SPAs, and that is the major, again, one way you can say that is the major changes as well. And moreover, we get everything from NuGet on the fly, and it is completely decoupled from the web server environment that hosts our application. So there is no dependency on system.webdll. So they internally made a decouple from our regular IIS web server. So that is the one reason right now this is supporting for multi-platform as well. And it supports IIS and IIS Express, Express and Web Listener, Kestrel Web Server, which runs on a variety of platforms. And there is a built-in support for application insights so that we can track and application activities and performance of our deployed apps. Apart from this, we can view and live reports which shows all the information about number of users are connected and what is the performance, including both client and server side, how it is. We can track all the history of system as well. It allows the developer easily to control how our application behave on different systems. So when we publish an application from the development to different environment like staging, testing and production, environment variables are set appropriately for the right environment, which allow us to optimize our application for in the respect of debugging, testing and production use. Developers and third-party software vendors can create their own custom servers which host to their ASP.NET applications. And moreover, there is no dependency of on system.webdll, so that it uses now lightweight HTTP context. If you see in earlier days, like HTTP payload was around 32 KB, and now it is reduced to around 6 KB, and this leads more responsiveness compared to the older web application. And as I told you that we can some way we can say we have to say goodbye to some like old dependency like system.web and registration. There is no registration dependency on the GAC folder, and there is no static compilation. And right now it supports next generation of dynamic compilers like Roslyn. So that make changes. There's many changes in code, and need to just refresh the browser to reflect our changes. That means while developing, if you run the application on the browser, the moment if you refresh the browser, so without rebuild the application, we can able to see the changes on the browser. Apart from there are many changes, so these are very limited. I listed out a very few and very important major changes in ASP.NET 5. ASP.NET architecture. ASP.NET 5, it runs, I told you, it can runs both. We can design and develop ASP.NET 5 application using both .NET framework, full framework, and as well as the .NET Core. And right now, the supporting for C# language, they're planning for supporting for Visual Basic as well. And so again, this is a very similar architecture. And if you say in the ASP.NET 5 works on two environment, as I told you, both ASP.NET and .NET Framework 4.6 and .NET Core 5. And ASP.NET has a built-in on .NET Core, and but I can also run on the .NET Framework for maximum support. Like if you're suppose if you're targeting your web app for Windows environment, so better to use .NET Framework 4.6 to make use of complete functionality on from the .NET 4.6. If you are targeting for your apps for any Linux or Mac OS, so there definitely we cannot use complete .NET framework. So we have to compromise some functionality. Maybe not 99% they are supporting all the features which are supporting in .NET 4.6, and some cases we have to compromise by using .NET Core 5. As I told you that .NET Core is very small and optimized runtime. That is mainly targeted for ASP.NET 5 and MVC 6 apps. So as I told you that .NET Framework 4.6 is the full-fledged complete framework. It is used for developing any kind of application. So recently Microsoft did some naming conventions for ASP.NET 5 and MVC 6. They renamed as MVC 6 and ASP.NET 5 as Microsoft ASP.NET Core 1.0. So I told you in the earlier they completely redesigned from the scratch. They did so much of architectural changes. So that is the one reason they don't like to call as MVC 6, or it is the next version of MVC 5 and the next version of ASP.NET, because they did complete changes to older versions. That is the one reason they want to call as one single name and a different name apart from MVC 6 and ASP.NET 5. So that they decided finally is that they're calling now MVC 6 and ASP.NET 5 as ASP.NET Core 1.0. So there are, apart from, there are other areas also they renamed, like ASP.NET 5 now is renamed as ASP.NET Core 1.0, and .NET Core, the framework, core framework also they renamed as .NET Core 1.0. Entity framework also they renamed as Entity Framework Core 1.0. So they want to make it a one ASP.NET team, that is ASP.NET Core 1.0. The architecture is very similar, and there is no, like, in the bottom, compilers and Roslyn languages and all supported languages, libraries and framework, and ASP.NET 4.6 and ASP.NET Core 1.0, and ASP.NET Framework is supporting as well as for Windows app and Windows platform. Core 5 is supporting both Mac and Linux and Windows as well. In nutshell, we can say ASP.NET 5 is total modular, and it is open source, a very fast development compared to older version, and it supports cross-platform, support Mac and Linux, support from Windows. It has some tiny frameworks, small frameworks. Earlier, we all depends on complete. If we develop any app, we are completely depending on full framework that is around 200 MB. Now they made as a very small frameworks around 20 MB and 30 MB, and supports for multi operating system, as I told you, Windows, Linux, and OS X. The summary, like a nutshell, like we have discussed in this session about MVC, like Microsoft.NET 2015 and .NET Framework 4.6 and .NET Core 1.0, and what exactly the execution model, and Microsoft Web Stack evolution from 1996 to 2016, and the current challenges in the web world, and how it is resolved in the ASP.NET 5, and what exactly the ASP.NET 5 architecture, the benefits, and how ASP.NET 5 and MVC 6 fits in the world of open source and cross-platform. Finally, we have seen ASP.NET Core 1.0 and why, what is the reason behind they renamed as MVC 6 and ASP.NET 5 to ASP.NET Core 1.0. Thank you very much for listening this video. If you like this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. You will get notified for the latest videos. Thank you so much.